Can I introduce, please, Team 1? Maya Walton, Chloe O'Brien, and Kathy Tran, presenting Climate Day, Disaster Preparedness in High Schools.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're Maya, Kathy, and Chloe, and we all study medical and biomedical science at the University of Technology in Sydney. Our journey in developing this project began while studying a transdisciplinary subject last semester. It's a privilege for us to share our work with you, and we can't wait to take you on this exciting journey with us.
When you were 15 years old, were you worried about the impacts of climate change on yourself or your family? Would you have felt prepared for possible natural hazards like a bushfire or flood at your home or school? In a short few decades, the world has changed, and 15-year-olds today face an entirely different and uncertain future compared to previous generations.
We often hear about crippling youth climate anxiety. The 2022 Mission Australia Youth Survey shows that 1 in 4 young people in Australia are very or extremely concerned about climate change, and nearly 40% of those respondents also reported high psychological distress. Experts have also highlighted a lack of climate education in schools, and our own experiences and discussions with recent high school graduates confirm this.
As part of our research, we wanted to hear directly from high school students on their experiences with climate change and natural hazards and how it made them feel. When we interviewed a graduate on how climate change affects her, she told us, well, it doesn't really. This was not the answer we were expecting, but with further prompting, she remembered an incredibly relevant story. This young person attended a high school beside a dam that readily flooded, and in 2022, she found herself on the top floor of the highest standing block of classrooms with her peers. The educators and students were not prepared for this sort of situation, adopting a wait-and-see approach. As the water began to reach levels that could strand them on campus, the students were finally told, remove your shoes and leave the school, meaning they had to wade through hazardous thigh-high waters to get home. So why, even after this flooding experience, did our interviewee still not perceive climate change and natural hazards as relevant to her, instead maintaining the naive and nonchalant attitude that I believe many of us can relate to from our teenage years?
Responding to this year's disaster challenge with our previous research in mind, our vision is that all young people are personally aware of how climate change will impact them and feel prepared for climate emergencies, whether they are already attuned and worried about climate change or couldn't care less. Research tells us that the sense of disempowerment and hopelessness linked with climate anxiety can be addressed by learning about the issues, taking action, and connecting with like-minded people. We also know that the right kind of education can transform young people's attitudes. Our goal is to empower young people with constructive and proactive strategies so they can become resourceful, knowledgeable participants in disaster preparedness in their communities.
So, how can we empower all young Australians to feel better prepared when facing natural hazards? Introducing Climate Day. Climate Day is an innovative education initiative with young people's mindsets at its heart. Climate Day is designed to educate high school students about the risks of natural hazards and to reduce anxiety in young people by equipping them with the knowledge they need to feel prepared for climate change impacts. This immersive program leverages schools to safely expose students to consequences and risks of natural hazards by immersing them in virtual reality scenarios. VR is enticing to young people. With its use in video games on the rise, is an innovative opportunity to leverage its appeal for young people before opening a wider discussion about early disaster preparedness.
Climate Day is a one-day incursion at each school, where the VR resources and emergency management experts are brought to the school to support student preparedness. It is a modular design made of a pre-brief, the VR scenario, debrief, brain break, disaster preparedness discussions, and a take-home activity. It is important to us that VR is one part of the integrated Climate Day program, supported by discussions with experts and not a standalone activity. The two main focuses of Climate Day are the VR activity and the discussions that take place before and after.
The Climate Day initiative is designed to achieve a range of learning outcomes such as students will understand the real and tangible impacts of a changing climate and recognize their potential to become a valuable resource for their peers, families, schools, and the wider community where they live. Students will acquire practical skills, knowledge, and a proactive mindset to effectively prepare and reduce the risk of natural hazards and disaster situations, fostering preparedness and readiness in the face of crisis. And finally, students will gain a better understanding of their role in the climate space and recognize their own capacities for addressing climate change challenges. The VR simulation serves as an immersive and engaging experience to spark student interest and create a sense of urgency that connects the unconnected student. With the help of our Disaster Challenge mentors, we developed an early draft of a VR scenario. What you're about to see is from the perspective of a student experiencing the simulation.
I entered the dimly lit classroom where virtual reality headsets sat on every desk. The Climate Day educator briefed us, and as I put on the headset, I was immediately immersed in a lifelike virtual world. The sound of crackling flames surrounded me, their deafening roar making my heart race. The thick smoke billowed, obscuring my vision and making each breath a struggle. But before I could panic, someone reached out to me, and I turned to see the reassuring face of a stranger. I was led away from the advancing flames to the local assembly point where other members of the community were gathered safely. They reassured me and offered me their well-prepared supplies consisting of water bottles and a first aid pouch to care for any potential injuries. I was so grateful for their help. I then joined them in distributing supplies to the other virtual inhabitants in need, just as I was, all under the darkness of the thick smoky sky and glow from the floating embers. I felt less daunted by the lingering fire now that I was surrounded by a caring and resilient community, seeming to have the scenario under control. Then I heard the sirens blaring. Through the smoke I saw the lights too. The firefighting team had arrived, clad in their flame-resistant gear, ready to combat the inferno. 2 firefighters came over and checked in with our group. They educated us on the importance of early preparation to protect ourselves from ever encountering this scenario again, as it's unlikely they'd be able to make it before disaster struck. After the virtual reality experience, I felt a sense of familiarity with the hazardous scenario, and for the first time, I really understood that we must do all that we can to individually prepare and be ready to act. I couldn't help but wonder what my virtual conclusion would have been like if I was there alone.
Conversation between students, teachers, and local emergency service personnel about the specifics of disaster preparedness for that community, inviting students to share their own views, drawing on their experience with the VR. The debrief will also ensure that any student questions and anxieties related to the VR experience are addressed by qualified experts, such as school counselors, to avoid re-traumatization in students who may have previously experienced a disaster similar to the VR. Research evidence shows that VR is effective in influencing behavioral change. Studies show that VR reduces the time spent in denial and deliberation and during fire incidents and encourages more rapid, decisive action. Almost 1/3 of participants developed a bushfire survival plan after experiencing VR, and even more than 3/4 of participants could remember key safety tips 3 months after the experience.
With the students now engaged, topics can be discussed and workshopped as a group to build knowledge, awareness, and skills, including household survival plans, protecting properties and pets, using the Australian Fire Danger Rating System, setting up different app and phone alerts for emergencies, and staying calm in a crisis. This can also be an opportunity to build community resilience by involving teachers, parents, and other members of the school community in refreshing their own knowledge of disaster response planning. The inclusivity of the debrief, involving specialist experts and different community members with young people, ensures a whole of community approach to disaster preparedness.
After the school-based VR experience, students will be invited to set up their own very low-tech VR experience they can take home and share with their families, along with links to key resources and information. Students will craft headsets using cardboard cutouts in which they can insert a mobile phone. With access to a Mozilla Hubs room, an innovative online platform that facilitates social VR experiences or other similar platforms, they can then watch a trailer of the disaster scene that would be viewed as a static 3D image with audio with their families. This virtual experience will serve as a catalyst for conversation by students with their households. It is an opportunity to transcend the usual shrug of the shoulders response to the question, "How was school today?" and expand the impact of the Climate Day initiative by opening meaningful discussions about disaster preparedness in the community.
The Climate Day initiative is designed to be adaptable to suit the needs of specific schools and geographical locations. The knowledge and skills learned through this initiative are transferable, but the VR experience could be targeted at the natural hazards most relevant to these locations. The modular design of a Climate Day program will also allow schools and local emergency services to work in partnership to co-design aspects of the program to make them locally relevant. This initiative can be tailored for both years 10 and 12, potentially alternating between bushfire and flooding scenarios, and even heat waves or cyclones, to account for students who do not complete the HSC, with the Year 12 program being a refresher.
The language settings within VR scenarios, whether through audio options or captions, can be customized to align with the specific linguistic requirements of users, including students from culturally diverse backgrounds. This adaptation is especially significant in a country where approximately 1/3 of the Australian population represents diverse cultural and linguistic backgrounds. For those with low hearing and impaired vision, audio descriptions, subtitles, and volume control will be accessible through the VR devices.
The Climate Day initiative is not just good value, it's exceptionally worthwhile. We know from discussions with our Disaster Challenge VR mentor that the major cost of Climate Day would be the initial setup of the VR system, including obtaining the headsets and developing the VR experience. However, once there are more than a few hundred students participating, Climate Day's return on investment makes it much more affordable.
Potential avenues for funding Climate Day can be through government grants, philanthropic or corporate funding, and sponsorships. Tech organizations such as Mozilla or Google might consider a sponsorship as part of the formal climate action plans.
The Climate Day initiative also has strong potential for partnerships with agencies and organisations such as Red Cross and emergency services, as well as local councils as it aligns with their community resilience goals. When we consider the cost-benefit analysis, we must also remember that every single one of these students is returning home with their low-tech VR kits to engage in conversations with their families. This effectively doubles our efforts.
Local emergency services and volunteer emergency organisations already have dedicated people whose role it is to engage with schools and communities and offer support. Climate Day provides an adaptable program structure and engaging VR content that stimulates conversations. This will take the pressure off the volunteers to generate such material and activities themselves. It is an economic option as it requires less than 1 day's commitment by emergency services and volunteers using ready-made resources. The initiative leverages the high school education system and its existing infrastructures, minimizing the cost of marketing, participant recruitment, and venue hire. The schools can also contribute using their existing services, such as school counsellors and educators, to the program to reduce the need of external assistance.
We aim to educate and activate youth by invoking a similar response in our students that was achieved by the Red Cross's Pillowcase program, which encouraged hazard preparation in children in primary school, and B Street Smart's shock factor experience on the impact of road trauma through real-life simulated car crash scenarios. These initiatives have demonstrated effectiveness in engaging young people in conversations around difficult topics, and it is proof that our aim of putting disaster preparedness at the forefront of young people's minds can be achieved through our method of VR simulation. The initial phase can commence with a trial that allows for an evaluation and any adjustments before a wider scale rollout. For this trial, 2 schools located in high-risk areas of flood and fire could be considered for a pilot program. This approach ensures a comprehensive testing ground for refining the disaster preparedness program.
This initiative offers a unique opportunity for students to engage in virtual reality relevant to emerging natural hazards, focusing on preparing young minds by learning to anticipate and respond to emergencies in collaboration with their peers. The students gain not only knowledge, but a sense of agency and control over what can feel like an overwhelming situation. Climate Day sheds light on the importance of raising awareness around natural hazards, calling to action students in reminding them of the importance of awareness in the face of such challenges. This program represents a pivotal shift in hazard preparedness education by acknowledging the emotional impact of climate change on students and creating a generation that is not only well informed, but also emotionally prepared to tackle future natural hazards. Our vision is that all people are personally aware of how climate change will impact them and feel prepared for climate emergencies. In the next 5 years, we will focus on rolling out Climate Day for all Year 10 and 12 students in bushfire and flood-prone areas. In 10 years, we want all Year 10 and 12 students across Australia to have participated in Climate Day. While we want to focus on high-risk students first, we recognise that all students in Australia need this innovative, immersive education opportunity. We want to create a future for young people so that no matter where they are coming from, they will walk away from Climate Day knowing what's important, why it's important, what to do, and how to prepare for the future.
Thank you all for listening. We'd like to quickly express our gratitude to all of our mentors for their invaluable guidance and support. Your advice has been instrumental in shaping and growing this project. Thank you for being such inspiring mentors on this journey.